Hello everyone, welcome to the Falcon Neutral Guide. I'm going to keep this relatively simple. So you want to go in and you press buttons. The end. No, but seriously. Okay, so most of the time, the way you play your neutral is going to be heavily dependent on what kind of matchups you're up against. For instance, against zoner characters, especially with those who have projectiles you can clank with or better, you're going to be relying mostly on a combination of drifting towards them back airs, drifting towards them this way with neutral airs, landing near choos, and running in and out, but mostly walking so that you can react to any projectiles that may be thrown at any time and be able to parry them on immediately. Especially with the universal nerf to projectiles on parry, there are actually a fair amount of times where if you parry a projectile and you're relatively close range to your opponent, like say the distance I am now, you can just do dash attack out of shield into imagination. It's also worth noting that another good example against a character like Young Link is if you read they're going to throw out literally any of their projectiles except for bomb, you can actually land with Nair 2 into grab, or you can land with Nair 2 into Raptor Boost. If you time it correctly, the first hit of Nair will beat through a lot of those projectiles, and then the second hit will go through like that, which is a godsend against zoners. Otherwise, though, just make sure you take your time, camp as long as you need to figure out what their patterns are, and then once you figure out what those are, you go in. Because the thing is, Falcon doesn't necessarily have the range or the brute force behind the strength of his options to just force your way in there and make your opponent respect your buttons. You have to figure out what your opponent's buttons are going to be in the first place and when exactly they're going to press them, and then just counteract them accordingly. That's a common theme in a lot of Falcon's options, and the strength of them is in their versatility and handling situations rather than imposing himself on your opponent. That more or less will give you an idea of how you want to play against a lot of zoner characters. Against a lot of more mid-range characters, you're going to be relying on a lot more specifically using your running like this, dash dancing. This is, of course, even though his dash dancing is not that great in this game, he's still a very fast man at the end of the day. And the reason this is so important is a lot of mid-range characters are fast enough to where they'll be able to use their frame data to move forward effectively, but they're not so fast that they can't immediately get away from anything they do. So if you're just running like this and they whiff punish for any reason, you'll usually be able to whiff punish it with something like that to help keep them honest. Once you can dissuade them from moving forward effectively by using a combination of your movement, drifting away F-tilts, and drifting away aerials, then what you'll be able to do is do something kind of similar with the zoner pat thing, where you take the time you need to figure out how they're going to move around in neutral, and then you go in with an option that beats whatever it is they're doing. Are they regularly spot dodging after pressing certain buttons or doing low normals? Go in with Nair 1 into imagination. Are they frequently, after landing, immediately running backwards so they can do other things? Read this with Raptor Boost so that you can get juggle started that way, for instance. Are they regularly coming towards you and landing with short-range aggressive buttons? You can actually use the armor on Raptor Boost as a way of beating it out fairly reliably and forcing an effective reversal. Or another good thing you can do is just parry into grab or parry into F-tilt. It's worth noting that against almost all characters, unless you have a burst range option and they're in some amount of lag, your best option is almost always going to be F-tilt. Especially at higher percents, because one, its range is good, its damage is good, and at mid ranges or at mid percents, you'll be able to force tech chases out of it that are amazing. Make sure to angle it downwards on lighter characters, regular on midweight characters, and angle it upwards on fast fallers, because this will make it to where it forces a tech situation that you can put yourself in a position to react and tech chase them for. The way that would work is you would just knock them down. If they get up, you react to it and grab them. If they tech away, you react to it and go over there. If they don't tech, you just react to it, jab reset, into down air, into imagination. Anyway, that'll more or less cover what you want to be doing in neutral against a lot of more mid-range characters. What's up after this point is the fast characters. So with fast characters, especially those that are going to be moving around you a lot more, you're going to be relying a lot more on just going for movement reads. The way this might look like is, it's actually kind of similar to the zoner plan where you want to take just enough time through defensive play to figure out how they're going to move around. And then you start trying to beat out their options accordingly. Like a good example is against Sonic. Good Sonic players will often get close to you, try and make you want to press a button, and then cross you up with forward air, which it'll scoop you up if it hits you, and if it doesn't, they just go past you and you're not able to punish. So against a lot of options like that, or ZSS trying to cross you up with aerials, or Fox landing behind you with Nair, for instance, a lot of the time the best thing you can do is just try and preemptively parry it. This might seem like a kind of a hard thing to do, but it's extremely rewarding if you can do it. And if you're not able to successfully get the parry, it's usually best to just defensively back away and realize that it's usually not going to be safe for them to go for a grab there. So the best thing you can usually do is to roll away, spot dodge, or just full hop out of shield and just get out of the situation. Otherwise, though, against fast characters, you're going to be relying a lot more on your safer non-movement read options that go a little something like this, such as just running up and jab. However, when you do run up jab as a way of thinking, oh, are you going to be here? Well, I'm going to hit you. Never ever hold it like this. What you always want to do is do the double tap. The double tap is just pressing the A button twice, and it's going to be one of your better movement read options, and the reason for it is quite simple. If you just press the A button twice in quick succession and then hold it on the second part, it'll make it to where if a hurtbox comes into your range, you will automatically gentleman, and if it doesn't, you can just back away immediately. Notice how safe that is? It's just fantastic. Seriously. Double tap. Don't do this. Do this. Don't do this. Do this. Every time. It's an option select, and it's much safer. If you have a more specific movement read, you go for jab. If you have a less specific one and you're not entirely confident on their exact position, but rather a general area they're going to be in, you have tilt. If you're more confident in where they're going to be and you want a higher punish, this is only for a hard read option. You either go for dash attack at high percent so you can set up potential kills, or at lower percents where you're able to get combos, you go for dash grab. More specifically, make sure you learn boost grabbing, which is just pressing the shield button and grabbing while doing this. It'll look something like this. However, if you have staled rolling or spot dodges, it'll weaken it significantly. Other things you can do are, like always, doing a lot of Nair is going to be really good against a lot of these characters, because while you're not usually going to get that much out of it, unless you get grounded Nair 1, it coming out in much faster succession than it did in previous games, with the true kicks being much closer in proximity to each other, makes it to where you're able to get hits, and you're able to stifle their movement a lot better than you could at the previous Nair. Like being able to do with this, it's two good hitboxes, both of which can lead into things, and it's going to be one of your better ways of pressing forward when you don't know where they're going to be. When you do know where they're going to be, you use one of those grounded options, or you go for a Nair 1 read. If you haven't realized it at this point, most of Falcon's neutral isn't necessarily things you impose on your opponent. It's things that are predicated on you understanding what your opponent is going to do, and then trying to counteract accordingly. So I implore you all, please make sure you learn the matchups that are relevant to you at all times. Understand what your opponents are going to be going for, and then ask yourself what you can do to specifically counteract those options. Falcon is a character that, while he's extremely versatile in what he can do, if you don't understand what it is you need to do in the first place, you won't be able to specifically utilize the efficacy of his inherently good options and the versatility explored by simply having them in the first place. This is true with his new toolkit in general. Has a lot of stuff like that. Last but not least is covering heavies. So the thing about heavies is you're specifically going to be relying on Nair 1, Nair 2 at very low percents into grab. you're going to be relying on double tap jab, and you're going to be relying on dash attack and dash grab. And sometimes retreating back airs. The reason for this is quite simple. With all of the aforementioned options except for retreating back air, every single one of them leads into beefy punishes. Quite simply, playing a fair game against the heavies is not in your best interest. The grappler characters are going to try and get massive damage on you off of just about anything imaginable, which they can because you're Falcon and you're combo food. So likewise, you need to make sure that you're playing that game too. Everything you do is going to lead into massive damage. If you get it, make sure you fully take advantage of that. The reason when you're you want to go for the double tap jab much more than you go for it against faster characters, because their bodies are so large that it's that much easier for you to get away with it. And of course, it's a way of winning neutral and forcing tech chases or forcing ledge trap situations, all of which are excellent for the cause. So with that in mind, if you read that they're going to be moving around, but you haven't exactly figured out how they're going to be moving around, you double tap. If you think that they're going to be throwing out a grounded button, for any reason whatsoever, jump over it, nair one them so that you can get your combo started, or wait it out and dash grab or dash attack. If you think that they're going to come in and you aren't exactly confident that you're going to be able to stop it, retreat with back airs. This way you can just either one, hit them if they're coming towards you, or two, reset the situation so you have some time to figure out what you want to do next. And then of course, if you have a more specific read on what they're going to do and you aren't even necessarily waiting for them to press a button, you can run in with dash attack or boost grabs, which will just obviously lead to everything imaginable. So make sure that you learn your follow-ups on that. Either way, hope you found this useful, the Falcon Neutral Guide. I wanted to keep it relatively simple and just talk about the philosophy behind these things more than anything. But if you enjoy my content, feel free to like and subscribe, and if you're really generous, maybe turn on notifications for my channel. Also, this should go without saying, but I'd really appreciate it if you turn off ad block for my page. It goes a lot further in helping me out than you might realize. Have a good night, everyone. I'm heading out to MomoCon.